Maybe it was broken by me, but that suitcase doesn't belong there, and the window should not have been wide open.
Hello, and welcome back. This is Steven, also known as Cotton Star, and this is Manifesto. In today's episode, I will examine the current and ongoing historical revisionism taking place in the case of JonBenet Ramsey. I will also examine the latest interview between Mr. Ramsey and investigative journalist Ana Garcia from her new podcast, True Crime News. From the very beginning, the Ramsey case has always had a sensational set of alternative facts that have competed with the actual authentic narrative in this case. Even in the post-truth world we are living in today, and yes, we are in it right now, I am still amazed how the media and a large portion of the public are allowing Mr. Ramsey, who, remember, was indicted on 2 different counts in this case, to be the definitive author on the current status of the investigation, on crucial pieces of evidence, as well as the overall theme and narrative of the case. All of which seems to have gone unchecked by the media, who have seemingly given Ramsey a paintbrush to paint this case any color he chooses. No matter the involvement you may believe Mr. Ramsey had in this crime, guilty or innocent or maybe somewhere in between, such as playing a role in the cover-up and or staging or harboring guilty knowledge before the 911 call, it doesn't matter. And the reason why it doesn't matter is this. Away from the brightly lit rose-colored lights of the media and down in the darkness of their dimly lit offices and in murder rooms across the country, forensic criminologists and investigators know when investigating an unsolved or unresolved case such as this, you should not look to gain or gather core information on the facts or evidentiary items from someone who is or was a suspect, and certainly not from someone who was indicted in a case. This extends out to anyone else on the peripheral, a family member, a friend, or anyone else tied to the case that has a serious vested interest in the outcome. So let's begin digging into the interview now. Starting at about 10 minutes and 10 seconds in, there are 3 key pieces of evidence that are discussed: the suitcase, the basement window, and JonBenet's pink Barbie nightgown. Let's roll it and break it down piece by piece.
Maybe it was broken by me, but that suitcase doesn't belong there, and the window should not have been wide open.
Okay, so right off the bat, Ramsey states that the basement window should not have been wide open. This photo is probably the poster crime scene photo in the Ramsey case. It certainly is the most recognizable. The fact is, however, this crime scene photo was taken on the night of the 26th of December, not in the morning. Specifically, this photo was taken 14 hours at least after Officer French first arrived at the crime scene. So, this photo with the window shown open is not a true or accurate depiction of how the crime scene looked when the police first arrived on the scene. Ramsey knows this window wasn't wide open when he first searched the basement. In Ramsey's first interview with the police in April of 1997, he told the police that it was open about 1/8 of an inch and just kinda latched it. Fleet White, who searched the basement before Ramsey, said he found the window closed but unlatched. So this photograph here actually shows how the window looked shortly after the police arrived while JonBenet was still missing. Here is a list of historical statements made by Ramsey throughout the years about the window in this case. And you can see how over the years, the opening of the window has grown from 1/8 of an inch to wide open.
Is it true that JonBenet's nightgown was in the suitcase?
Apparently, with
Why would it be in the suitcase?
no reason at all.
Is this
Okay, so immediately after the window whitewash, Garcia asked John is it true that JonBenet's nightgown was in the suitcase? John immediately says apparently while shaking his head yes. And when Garcia adds, why would it be in the suitcase? John confirms by answering, no reason at all. This is an absolute fallacy. This is misinformation that is further misrepresented by Ramsey's own words. It is an incontrovertible fact that JonBenet's favorite nightgown was found in the wine cellar next to her body with her blanket, which is a problem.
When JonBenet's body was found, there was one of her favorite nightgowns next to her so-called Barbie nightgown. And so there was the impression that whoever did this cared about this child, left the nightgown, left the blanket. Again, her parents did it, but they loved her, so they tried to comfort her even in death.
That's a very strange, that nightgown should not have been there. It's a clue of some type, we don't know what.
Barbara Walters is right here. The fact that JonBenet's nightgown was found balled up next to her body along with her blanket in the wine cellar is a crucial piece of behavioral evidence in this case. What this tells investigators is that whoever committed this crime or perhaps played a role in the staging and cover-up was someone emotionally tied to JonBenet. They loved her and cared deeply for her. Moving the nightgown away from her and into the suitcase by the window plays into the mythology of a mysterious madman who may have tried to remove JonBenet's body with the suitcase but failed to do so. And right on cue, immediately after the nightgown, comes a question about the suitcase.
No reason at all.
Is this even your suitcase? Do you know what this is?
Yeah, it's been so long ago, I don't know if that was our suitcase or not. It didn't, all I saw was that should not have been there.
Right. It looks completely out of place.
Exactly.
Okay.
So right after the nightgown comes the suitcase. Garcia quickly asks John, is this even your suitcase? Do you know what this is? And she hands the photo over to him and he says, it's been so long ago I don't know if that was our suitcase or not. To me, this is sort of a passive evasive answer that again works to conjure imagery and mystery around the broken basement window. Ramsey knows that this suitcase was owned by his family and was primarily used by John Andrew. It had been in the Ramsey home months prior to the murder. In Ramsey's '98 interview, while in discussion about the suitcase, Ramsey told Lou Smith, I took that suitcase downstairs, I remember. Lou Smith also asked Ramsey when did he move that suitcase downstairs, and Ramsey responded, months before, probably months before, 2 months before. It was one of these Samsonite suitcases that, I don't know, the kids used to bring some clothes home, the older kids. So, thus far, we have learned that the basement window was not wide open or even open before JonBenet's body was found shortly after 1 p.m. The nightgown was not in the suitcase, rather, it was balled up next to her with her blanket in the wine cellar. And the suitcase was in fact a Ramsey family suitcase, and John had moved it downstairs to the basement months prior to the murder. Now, back to the window.
Exactly.
Okay. So.
And I told the police officer that morning, I said, look, the window's open. It shouldn't have been open. It was broken. I may have broken it a year ago. It never got fixed. I don't know. But it sure shouldn't have. That suitcase should not have been there, and the window should not have been open.
Okay, so John Ramsey says that on the morning of the 26th of December, during the kidnapping phase of the crime, that he told Detective Linda Arndt about the broken window and suitcase after his first early morning search of the basement. This scenario or sequence is an extremely important piece of the puzzle if you want to even begin to comprehend the Ramsey crime scene. It is one of the few keys to the case. The fact is, though, Ramsey never told Linda Arndt or the police about the broken window in the basement that day. Okay, so when we look back at Ramsey's first interview with the Boulder Police in April of 1997, Detective Thomas asked John, and you mentioned when you went down in the morning on the 26th and it was on latch, did that strike you as odd or did you bring that to anybody's attention? Ramsey responded with, I don't know, and then went on to tell Thomas that the window being open wouldn't have been dramatically out of the ordinary because sometimes the basement got hot. A year later, in Ramsey's 1998 interview when talking about the window, Lou Smith asked John, "Well, wouldn't that trigger your, and did you tell anybody about the window?" Ramsey said, "I don't really remember," and then goes on to elaborate why he didn't think it was a big deal at the time. Furthermore, tucked inside Dr. Henry Lee's book, Cracking Cases, he writes, John Ramsey replied that he simply didn't know why he had kept quiet about what he had found. And if that isn't enough, there's this. In Detective Linda Arndt's police report, she details how on the 27th of December, after the autopsy of JonBenet had been completed, her and Sergeant Mason went to the Fernie's home, where the Ramseys were temporarily staying, at 9:30 p.m. They talked with Mr. Ramsey for about 40 minutes, and it was Linda Arndt who actually told John that there was a broken window located in the basement of his home. And then after he was told this, John told them that he had broken the window out 4 or 5 months prior. This was brought up by Larry King in an interview with the Ramseys in 2000.
In the book, you write about the suitcase in the open basement window, but the police say you never told them about it.
Oh, that's false. I told Linda Arndt that I found the window open and I found a suitcase under the window. They have photos of this in their crime scene photos.
Crystal Lake.
Ramsey is referring to this crime scene photo, which we talked about earlier, which was taken during the night of the 26th after everyone had left the house by the CSIs processing the scene. So there is definitely a pattern here. The evidence is that when Ramsey was officially questioned by the police in his interviews, he told investigators that he didn't know why he didn't tell the police about the window in the basement. However, on the public stage and in the media, Ramsey says the opposite. Moving on to the flashlight that was found on the kitchen counter in the Ramsey home and was collected into evidence on the 27th of December.
We were talking about the flashlight.
Yeah.
So this isn't your flashlight.
What I told the police was, I have a flashlight like that, but it's not dirty. It's not covered with dust and crud. And so I said, that's not my flashlight. I have one that's very like it, but not mine. And
Okay, first of all, the Maglite flashlight isn't unknown. The flashlight was owned by John Ramsey, and it was a gift from his son, John Andrew Ramsey. When shown the flashlight in their police interviews, both the housekeeper Linda Hoffman Pugh and Ramsey friend John Fernie told the police that the flashlight was indeed John Ramsey's. Ramsey's apparent confusion on whether this was his flashlight or not because of the dirt or powder that was on it seems a little bit disingenuous. This powder that covers the flashlight is from the leftover fingerprint powder left in place by the police. Ramsey, who was an excellent analytical CEO at the top of his game at the time, couldn't determine if the flashlight was his or not from the picture. However, his housekeeper and good friend, John Fernie, were able to do so. And speaking of the flashlight and fingerprints, or in this case, the lack thereof, the flashlight was forensically tested for fingerprints and none were found on it. It was scoured for prints, inside and out. Even the batteries were tested and not a single fingerprint was found on the flashlight or the batteries inside the flashlight at all. Zip, zilch, zero. In addition to the flashlight, the Sharpie pen, the ransom note, and the broken paintbrush, used as a handle for the nylon cord ligature in this case, all came back from the lab absent of fingerprints, even though these are all everyday items that came from the Ramsey home. So naturally, they should harbor some of their fingerprints on them. Yet, not one fingerprint was found on any of these crucial pieces of evidence in this case. This is a critical clue. In this case, the absence of evidence is evidence. I will dig into the details and analyze this evidence in my next episode, the weaponization of the DNA. We are currently living in the age of disinformation, and I worry about what history will show in this case 25, 50 years from now. Will the next generations blindly believe an intruder entered the Ramsey home through a window on Christmas night in 1996? Will most or all of the relevant information on the reality of the Ramsey case be forever lost to digital deception and the banning of the books? And finally, What will the people think when they find out George Washington never really did cut down that cherry tree? Are you watching closely?